Tepu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Haru Nefer. This is Qesankh my Keperu with another exciting video for you. And in this video, I want to talk about the secret agenda of white supremacy. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. If this is your first time to my channel, hit the subscribe bell to get notifications on when I go live and when I upload recorded videos. If you want to know more about my spiritual teachings, you can become a Patreon supporter for as little as $1, $5, or $20 per month. It's up to you. There's no obligation and you can cancel at any time. As a supporter, you will get access to instructional videos on the esoteric, videos that will teach you how to properly meditate, breathing exercises to calm you down and bring about optimal health, how to put together a magical amulet, how to contact the ancestors, astral projection, and we also have a lot of great articles on H.P. Blavatsky, Aleister Crowley, and a lot of other great things. So become a Patreon supporter today. Last but not least, share this video with family and friends so we can get the revolution started. So, Haru Nefer. The last couple of days, I've been taking a deep dive into trying to understand the different perspectives on racism and white supremacy, coming from, figures such as Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, who else? Neely Fuller, Dr. King, and there's a great component that I think that we're missing, and it's one that if we don't look at it, examine it, and get a grip on it, a lot of the work that we're doing to prevent and thwart white supremacy will be in vain. Now, I have very different views on the idea of how racism spread, because in my opinion, if you look at, and there's a big distinction between racism and white supremacy, but I won't get into that in this video. But if you look at how white supremacy became a global phenomenon, it's to me, it's just as a natural occurrence, as something spreading organically. I just don't buy it. Rather, I take a different perspective and look at it because I see that there are occult forces that govern the planet, and I think that these occult forces were used to spread white supremacy throughout the planet. And this is through what we in the occult community call pendulums or ergobores, or thought viruses. Some of you may be familiar with the 100 monkey principle, where an idea or thought can spread throughout a group of people or a race and causing them to adapt it. And we've seen a lot of this in the idea of culture, how culture can spread from the East Coast to the West Coast, or from the Europe to Africa to Asia. And this culture or these ideas are spread without having people in contact with one another. So there is this psychic connection that's made that transfers ideas in the forms of thought viruses or these thought spirits. And consequently, people adapt them and in many cases become slaves to them. So when you hear me refer to pendulums or ergobores, this is what I'm talking about. And this is my view on white supremacy and how it was deliberately spread. Now, in the occult, we know how to create an ergobore or a pendulum. And there are natural ones that exist. We know that corporate America, when they have their logos or what we call sigils, that also accompanies an ergobore or a pendulum. Because you going into that environment, you are subject to that occult force. And sometimes you'll hear maybe HR say this or someone say this, well, you're not a cultural fix for us. You know, what's the culture of the company? You'll hear those terms. And if you're not a cultural fit, and basically what that means is the herbivore doesn't like you and doesn't want you in that environment. And there are many different types of herbivore. There's herbivores that can make you rich, that can make you poor. And we know the strongest herbivore or pendulum on the planet is white supremacy. And I think that this, to me, was created by occultists, the same occultists that are ruling the planet, the oligarchy, the Illuminati, if you want to give them a name. But now, I see us, in a way, fighting white supremacy from the point of, you know, that it was created based on phenotype. And because your skin complexion and your phenotype is different than us, we then create this hierarchy where, because we lack melanin, we're far superior to you. And we know that was a concocted, masterful lie. And religions fall victim to that lie, the idea of Adam and Eve being white, which we know that could never have been. They would have to have been people of color, melanated people, to survive in that warm, hot climate, the same with the ancient Egyptians. But white supremacy has this agenda to subjugate and to put out propaganda about people of color who represent the dominant people on the planet. Now let's get into this. We know about the Middle Passage and our ancestors being chained to these slave boats and taken to the New World to be enslaved and to service white people. Now, as I said, the basis of this propaganda and the justification from this, also from a scientific and religious perspective, is that based on color and phenotype, black people are inferior. And this gives the justification, religiously and scientifically, to subjugate us and to make us slaves. And we know during the studies that were done that the science didn't actually back this up. This is why the propaganda was put out and is still out there even today. So we're fighting on all fronts to deal with this white supremacist agenda, which keeps us oppressed. But the problem that we're dealing with is the countermeasures that we're using. We think, as in I think the big mistake that happened with Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad, is that you can't counteract white supremacy by putting black supremacy or black nationalism. It doesn't work because you're doing the exact same thing as our oppressors have did or are doing. The whole one of the mainstays of the Nation of Islam was that we are the original black man and we're superior to white people. So you can't base your philosophy on the same philosophy that oppressed you. But here's what we're really fighting, and we have yet to take a hold of it. You see, we've studied science and we know that black people are predominantly right-brained and white people are predominantly left-brained. And because they're predominantly left-brained, they've constructed a world based on left-brain thinking, linear. Whereas black people think psychically, or not psychically, or cyclically, they think linearly, where a lot of what we look at is in terms of synthesis, they look at in terms of segregative thinking, separating, labeling, defining. And if you look at their ideology, which is based on the Hegelian dialectic, where you have good and evil fighting each other, black people in our African tradition didn't see such a thing as evil in the world. We saw that all things serve to further, and that evil is a necessary component for you to spiritually grow, and that your fight is against your emotions, subduing your emotions. Whereas a European thought is binary. You're either with me or you're against me. Or it's either left or right or wrong. And what this has done from a scientific and religious perspective is created hell on earth. Hell on earth to the point of where their God operates on such good and evil, left and right, hot and cold. When life is more complex than that. African people never saw things in that way. But the European mindset could not think any other way but segregatively. Where we would think congregatively. We would look at how to bring things together and make them work harmoniously. And another issue is that the lack of being able to see abstractly. Europeans have a problem with that. This is why in ancient Kemet we saw God as Amen. No form, no physicality. But whereas we would see that, comprehend that, and understand that principle, Europeans had a problem with that, so they had to create a version of God that was the white man with the beard, because they had a problem with abstract concepts. Whereas we thought abstractly naturally. This is why we can read the Bible and we know abstractly it's a book of metaphors. Whereas they read the Bible and they think it's an actual history book because they're looking at it literally. Because their mind looks at the surface of what they're reading, whereas we look at it a bit deeper, metaphorically. This is where the Metu-Neter, the hieroglyphics, comes from. We created those pictorial representations that represented concepts. That the mind could understand. But for them, it's an issue. You see, the world that the European man has created is one of racism and sexism, because a byproduct of segregative thought process, left brain thinking, is to see things in black and white, good and evil, and not to see the world as full of complementary elements. So therefore he looks at his woman as not a natural component to himself, one that brings holistically a view of life. he looks at his woman as a contradictory element that opposes his existence. Same with people of color. So our fight is against the white supremacist mindset of hegemony. Because this whole idea of hegemony is that they want to control, for lack of a better word, the ideology that dictates the world. That their way of life is the standard by which everybody must adapt to and adhere to and live by. So instead of recognizing our sovereignty to worship our own religions and to go into an educational system and have it conform to right brain thinking, we are subjugated to learning everything based on the left brain thought process. The left brain works through auditory modalities. So we have to sit in the classroom and hear a lecture. That's how the educational system is set up. Where the right brain doesn't work that way. Do you understand? We have to go to a church every Sunday and hear a sermon by the preacher. Right brain doesn't work that way. But again, through hegemony, we're forced to comply with that perspective. And their ideology, their left brain thinking has been forced upon the world and has created so much death and destruction. The idea of left brain thinking causes racism, causes sexism, causes binary thinking. Left brain thinking cannot resolve issues, especially moral issues. That's the property of the right brain. So when they set up a judicial system based on left brain thinking, you have an imbalance. You have an unjust system. Because you're forced to comply with a faculty of thinking that does not encompass how life really works. Let me explain this, because it's the difference between left brain thinking and holistic thinking, seeing the universe holistically. This is why the European man doesn't understand death. This is why the European man does not understand the concept that there are spirits, that there are interdimensional beings out there that we can communicate through the faculty of trance. He doesn't understand that. It's too abstract a concept. He needs things to be literal. Whereas African man and woman look at the world from medicine, science, religion, holistically. And we said, death is not to be feared. We can explore what happens in the death process by taking lotus flower, creating herbs, and going into that experience through an alternate state of consciousness. We know that there are different dimensions, parallel realms, universes, because we can go there through trance. But This Western mindset cannot accept the idea of trance. This is why in their religions, they're firmly against meditation and alternate states of consciousness through the process of trance. This is why they do not believe that you can connect and talk to God through the oracle system. Even though their own people in ancient Greece, with the Oracle of Delphi, communicated with God. Everything is concrete with them. They cannot, and they refuse to explore the metaphysical concepts that are out there. It was Nikola Tesla that said, we will make more progress in science once we start understanding frequencies, different realms, different dimensions. But if you are a concrete thinker, a left brain thinker, you're going to refuse to accept that. And therefore, you will deny the possibility that these metaphysical realms even exist. The European man walks around afraid of ghosts and spirits and haunted houses because he does not understand the spirit realm. He does not accept it because it's not something that's concrete. It's not something that can be taken in through the five senses. If you want to know how we built the pyramids and how we built our great civilizations, and Egypt was just one of many great civilizations, we did so because we were holistic brain thinkers, using both the right and left hemispheres of the brain. So when we're looking at dealing with this global catastrophe of white supremacy, yes, we've got to deal with it through the fact that we are being subjugated based on color and phenotype. Yes, but we also have to look at the fact of the matter is we've got to solve this issue. This issue of hegemony where they are imposing their very limited, narrow-minded, ignorant perspective on the universe. Because there was a point in time where we mapped the stars, documented life after death, reincarnation. They cannot understand reincarnation. Again, it's too abstract. They're sitting on the throne of the planet, will destroy us because they have an inability to think holistically. They don't know the process of synthesis. That two elements can come together to make a third element. Their idea is two opposing viewpoints where one has to be right. Two things can be true at the same time. They have a problem holding two frames of thought that diametrically oppose each other. They have a problem holding that, contemplating that, and operating from that perspective. You see, when black people were brought here We not only kept our traditional religion, but we incorporated their Christian religion because it was forced upon them. We married the two religions. And this was perplexing to the slave master. He couldn't understand, how could we have these two religions? And didn't have an issue with them contradicting each other. We were like, no, there's no contradicting ideas here. We understand that both can exist together. And this goes out to our white brothers and sisters as well, because you've been lied to and you've been duped as well. You have fallen victim to a system that's limiting. Because once your foundation does not encompass both left and right hemisphere thinking, then you can't grow spiritually, scientifically. The universities themselves are set up in such a way as to not really educate you, but just to teach you the best way to regurgitate information. That's not real knowledge. That's not real wisdom. You pay all this money to go into this institution, this prestigious institution, and instead of learning to tap into the wisdom faculty Tahuti that is within you, like Nikola Tesla did, you're presented with information, because this society bases everything on information, book learning. You're presented with that, and then you're tested on how well you remember what you were given. And consequently, you're giving a degree based on rote memorization. That's all that degree is about. You see, everything that we learn is based on information that are in books, reading. But there's higher ways to learn by going into trance and accessing that information or accessing that knowledge that is stored within the collective consciousness that Carl Jung talked about. But you see, again, if you try to bring this up or discuss this, and many academic leaders have tried, they've been ostracized. Knowledge comes from within. You can intuit wisdom and information and learn from masters that are in the inner planes. Learn from beings that are in different dimensions. I'm going to tell you this. The ruling elite, the reason why they are so powerful and the reason why they rule the planet is because they are in direct contact with spirits. You see, they do rituals. They open up portals. And they communicate with dark beings that give them information and wisdom. Or dark wisdom. That enables them to rule the planet. But listen, I digress. I just want you to understand that there are other ways to grow, to learn, to become a master of the universe. We are never going to free ourselves in white supremacy as long as we are subjugated and as long as we take on their ideological perspective on life. Because their mindset is so limited. This is why they come out with medicine to cure you of an ailment, but in return, it creates more problems. That's a lack of seeing things holistically. That's a lack of understanding how to resolve opposites properly. They don't see you as consciousness, and that the physical body is just an avatar, a vessel where consciousness is housed. They can't fathom that. It's too abstract of a concept for them. And consequently, if you start to talk about things like that, they'll quickly label and define you and put you on the peripheral. But they themselves realize that they are limited and that they are causing problems. And this is why many of them are looking back into antiquity, where those answers and knowledge existed from our ancestors. Some of them are doing that. And I want you to understand that we can save ourselves. But to do that, we have to approach this from a multifaceted perspective and understand it's not just about color. It's not just about learning history and putting black faces on the historical figures.
What you talking about?
It's about transforming the planet from a specific vibrational frequency and way of thinking into a revolutionary new holistic way of looking at the universe. God is not about good and evil. In fact, when you get to 5D and the higher dimensions, there is no good and evil because everything is one. So you cannot oppose yourself, because all that there is you. And that if you want to know how we built the pyramids, if you want to know how we do these fantastical things, you have got to tune in to self, know thyself. Become a multi-dimensional being where you are here in third density or 3D and also in 5D. Existing in both planes, accepting the physical and the metaphysical. And valuing both. This is the true resolution to white supremacy. I want to thank you. If you have benefited from this information, if it resonates with you, please donate to the challenge or donate to the channel. Well, the challenge too. This is Qesankh Keperu, son of my aunt Tootie. My aunt is the beautiful goddess Heteru. Until my next video, Amen Ra.